Living fuels. One of the main problems is the supply of oil has become harder and more expensive to acquire. The price per barrel is getting larger. Also, the CO2 emissions are sparking for innovations to deplete those. What's this lead to? We either find new technologies for drill for oil, or we find an alternative fuel, renewables or sustainables. The sustainable sources we have are Generation 1 and Generation 2 biofuels. Generation 1 is food crops. This sparks another debate, which is the food and fuel debate, which says that the land needed for food crops is going towards fuel crops. That's a touchy subject for people because we have starving people in our country. Generation 2 are non-food crops, such as wood and switchgrass. There's a similar land debate, but there's also the use of fossil fuels to acquire the final product in those, and this sparks the next generation of biofuels. Third generation biofuels use algae differently than using the crops. Advantages: when you use water and the land that isn't usable for crops and human consumption, algae can grow in this, such as salt water and brackish water and wastewater. 2, we have a lot more harvesting rotations per acre. So versus for even sugarcane, where we have 2, or corn, which we have 1, biofuels that use algae have multiple in them. There's a low nutrient requirement, and they can be manufactured into a wide range of fuels such as diesel, jet fuel, and petrols. There are major shortcomings and limitations. Major shortcomings is the power density in current algae species is low because the amount of oil we have extracted from them isn't high enough levels. 2, there are limitations with our growing technologies that make for lower yields than expected through contamination, such as the open pond system. But this promotes technology and genetics for both engineering. Studies show that environmental stresses such as nutrient depletion, radiation, pH levels, and spectrum fluctuations have ways of sparking a natural increase in lipid production. The way this works is we're going to focus on the nutrient depletion. Is the nitrogen deliverance is easily controlled because algae just doesn't extract the gas formations of NOx's and N2 gas directly from the air, so we have to deliver it to them as an inorganic fertilizer. This is done over the course of 1 or 2 days versus over 1 or 2 days in the entire growing cycle of a couple of 6 to 9 days. And when you do this, you notice an increase in trialkylglycerol biosynthesis and polar membrane lipid increase by an increase of about 65%. And it actually fluctuates depending on what species of algae you're talking about. So the reason this occurs is whenever the lipids, trialkylglycerides and polar membrane lipids, they do not contain nitrogen, so they're not affected by the depletion. However, though, the enzymatic activity that creates proteins and nucleic acids is abstracted. And one of the main things you see an increase in some species of a galactolipid alkyl hydrolase, which is a crucial step in the tag biosynthesis. And when this increases, it takes the free fatty acids floating around and it transforms them into this usable oil, storage oil, the trialkylglycerides. So for commercial scaling, I believe that the nutrient depletion is one of our best options just because we have the ability to control it completely, 100%. And it does not inhibit growth rate. It increases the energy rate of return by substantial amounts. It's applicable to all technologies growing for algae. It saves on fertilizer costs, and it reduces the amount of biomass that is a byproduct that isn't sometimes usable, but sometimes we do find uses for it. So what we do is commercial scaling, just like other biofuels, is we take the oils and we run it through transesterification, which turns it into a biodiesel or other types of fuels that we can extract and be used for commercial use. There are still challenges that exist though. In the biodiesel industry, you have to worry about the long-term storage because of the trans fatty acids susceptible to oxidative attack. This is also very similar to Generation 1 and Generation 2 biofuels. The lipids produced naturally are saturated and unsaturated, and they usually range from 0 to 5 double bonds per length, and the lengths usually go from 10 to 16. So the biomass derived from this is also usable. We have the ability to burn it and increase our energy rate of return because we're using it to continue the processing. Some of the largest potentials, algae in wastewater is one of the largest, but what comes first is the vertical farming. Vertical farming allows us to put these anywhere. You don't need land and you don't need water, and whenever you put a vertical farm, an algae farm anywhere, you can put it next to a wastewater treatment, which will actually decrease the amount of processing they need to do for the wastewater, just because algae uses the wastewater and it uses it to grow. So if you add that into our nutrient depletion, we can increase significantly the amount of lipid production, as well as adding it to a process, thus decreasing our energy rate of return significantly. Also, by inducing the pollutant CO2 from combustion factories or from combustion source generations, we can pump this through our vertical farms, and it can actually increase our production of algae significantly, thus reducing the energy rate of return. So as a summary, I would just like to say that commercial use on algae is phenomenal. We have the ability, and we're just innovating. Every year we're innovating more and more, and as the price of oil goes up, more innovations are going to occur, and we're going to find new technologies that are going to increase our energy rate of return and decrease the amount per barrel of biofuels. These are my sources. Thank you very much.